This is Ken Forster, Executive Director of Momentum. Welcome to our Digital Industry Leadership Podcast, produced by, for, and about digital industry leaders. In this series of conversations, we capture insights from the best and brightest minds in digital industry. They're executives, entrepreneurs, advisors, and other thought leaders. What they have in common is, like our team at Momentum, they are deep industry practitioners. We hope you find these podcasts informative. As always, we welcome your comments and suggestions. Good day and welcome to edition 137 of our Digital Industry Leadership Series. Today, I'm very pleased to welcome Eva Schönleitner, CEO of Crate.io, the leading global database for industrial IoT and machine data. Crate is one of our Momentum portfolio companies. Eva has over 20 years of international experience in technology and industries. She was most recently head of digital partnerships at the global industrial company ABB based in Switzerland. Prior, she held senior management positions over 20 years in the U.S. in sales, marketing, and product management roles in global technology companies such as Microsoft and VMware, as well as management consulting roles with Deloitte and IBM. She is an Austrian native, having studied chemistry and mathematics at the Kepler University in Linz, and holds an MBA from Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. Eva, welcome to our Digital Industry Leadership Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really exciting to be here today.
It's really exciting to have you as well. I certainly wanted to do this earlier in your time with Crate.io, but I thought it'd be really interesting to get a perspective now that you've got a good 8 months in role as their new CEO. So I always like to kind of bookend the questions, starting off with, to get a sense for the person in their digital industry leadership journey. What would you consider to be the red thread of your leadership journey?
I've been always looking for roles that I find really challenging, that bring new opportunities in terms of creating something new, changing something of a larger nature, be very often on the leading edge, almost bleeding edge of technology. So something where I don't just take over a role and then just manage and have a 0.5% improvement over my last 3 successors. That's not the kind of roles I'm looking for. And you will see this when we talk a bit of my background of how each role really moved and really captured that criteria. And that's where I succeed then also quite well over the years.
I can see that, and why you are so well placed where you're at now. I would term it transformational leadership, perhaps, as an example. So coming out of a chemical and mathematics degree, you jumped right into consulting with IBM and later with Deloitte, leading e-business business service initiative, which I must say it was back, and that was one of my starts as well back in the day. You might even call it one of the first digital transformation initiatives, at least relative to enterprise. So what inspired you to jump to consulting from this background, and what lessons do you think we learned from that e-business wave?
Yeah, well, you're totally dating us now, you know this. Hopefully, thank goodness it's a podcast and not one with pictures where one could maybe see my gray hair here. What happened is basically I did a technical degree, a master's degree in Austria, and then very quickly throughout realized that I want to be really on the business side of things. And it's great if you have your technical degree, but we're really missing finance, accounting, and some other strategic directions. So what I did is I moved to the US, went to Emory and got my MBA after just a very few years of work experience. And then after that, I thought, while I'm in the US, isn't this a great opportunity to gain a bit more work experience there? And so I started moving into business consulting there, and very quickly moved into technology consulting at IBM for several years. My industry background is consumer packaged goods and retail, and so that's where I was in the days. Moved very quickly from what one did in the days, process improvements and things like that, into technology consulting. I'm also one of these many people that implemented SAP and other technology solutions then at these kinds of customers, consumer packaged goods ones, food services, and so on. And that's really got my grounding there. And my first really global large company experience And I loved it because that practice, even in the day, was very innovative, was at the bleeding edge of technology and what they applied. And I was in the US. I did think that after 3 years, I'd come back, and I don't know how that happened, but I was in the US for over 20 years and just recently came back again in 2017. So a slight delay on that one.
But certainly well placed in the companies and the geographies you were at. You and I might have actually overlapped. I'm thinking, the Emory University and CPG. I was a Coke man, so headquartered there in Atlanta, and certainly very strong CPG initiatives, and yes, SAP. So I know you held.
What I did is, Atlanta, coming from Austria, the Central European kind of mildish climate, or relatively, and also having strong seasons. So I'm an outdoor person, and in Atlanta, it was just too hot and humid for me. So I figured out, I don't want to stay there in terms of living, but I found the Pacific Northwest was very similar. And so I moved my husband and I moved to Seattle in the days, and unfortunately IBM didn't have a great practice there, so that's when I moved to a regional practice in Deloitte. Same kind of focus, also kind of very retail distribution, consumer packaged good focused, but also basically technology consulting, IT consulting, and I had a wonderful time there. So it was an excellent experience.
I can imagine. Having lived through a number of summers, i.e. July and August in Atlanta, I can appreciate it's not much of an outdoor sport there, unless you happen to find some water somewhere. So I know you held progressive digital leadership roles over 11 years at Microsoft, of course, Pacific Northwest. And I'd say, what was probably a relatively formative time for that company. And then you went on to do similar roles for VMware and Sage. What were some of the highlights of your time at these companies, and how did this help shape your perspective of digital industry?
Very much so. When you really think about it, when you're in consulting, and anybody has been in consulting or knows this, usually you need to figure out, are you moving up the partner track? And I at the time decided, as I was building out this e-business practice, I formed a lot of partnerships with technology companies, and like the SAPs of the world, and then Oracles and so on, and realized, wow, this partnership building is really something I have passion for. And in fact, I would love to work for a software company, the technology company itself, actually doing exactly that. And this is how I actually came to Microsoft. In the days, Microsoft was just getting really expanding into the enterprise. And obviously from what I just said, I was in the enterprise at the time and knew how to manage partnerships. And so that's how I got started there, managing large partnerships, global ones. Like in many large technology companies, every 2 to 3 years we switch roles. And so I was in the various partnership roles for 4 to 5 years. And then my old manager then basically sat me down one day and said, hey, you need to decide what you want to do. You can stay in a role like this. It's basically enterprise-wide. It's global role. It's sales-focused. But if you really want to make your move up to the levels, you need to get other experience and broaden your skill set. And in Microsoft, I think it's still the same today. You absolutely had to get regional experience, not get out of the tower of corporate, and also be very close to a product. And I thought about it and said, I want to do this. I want to broaden my experience. I'm young enough. Why shouldn't I do this? And so in the days, one of the roles I moved over is quite a radical move, is moved to the Windows Business Group, Windows Client in this case, so desktops, not server, and to the US subsidiary. Anybody who knows Microsoft knows that the difference between the US subsidiary, which is in like one town of subtown of Seattle, and the corporate headquarters is by car maybe 10 minutes away, 15 if there's traffic, but it still made a difference. And my role changed there quite significantly. I was the number 2 over there for this Windows Business Group. 3 years later, I decided, and I launched Windows 7 there and had really exciting times. Looked at different market segments, everything from consumer to small business, mid-markets, and the enterprise, worked with partners again, where I came from. So it's a great experience. But then I thought, to the point of 10 minutes away, shouldn't I really take the opportunity to go into, I wouldn't say a real region, but a more distant region? And at the time, I was already in the US for 15 plus years. It's like, wouldn't this be the opportunity to jump back into Europe and be closer also to my family? I have to say there's private reasons for that too. But really jump into a region and that one that's really far away. And so I did. I had the opportunity to move to actually Munich and become the number one of the Windows Business Group for Central and Eastern Europe, which is 30 plus countries, including Russia, Poland, and so on, all the stands. At the time then, I launched the first cloud service there, Windows Intune, into several countries there. And it was just a natural progression, but it was excellent experience because one is out of corp, one truly is in countries and regions. And also from a career step, obviously, I did make a ladder step up as I took over the whole business group versus just pretty much half of it.
Well, some great steps, and I hadn't realized the size of the region you were running in out of Munich. That's quite impressive across there. Impressive enough that in 2017 you joined ABB as Group Vice President of Digital Partnerships for ABB. Shortly after Guido Giray, who this podcast knows very well because we've featured him on several times, became Chief Digital Officer. So, what was your mandate at ABB, and what were some of the wins in that role?
Yeah, totally. I mean, after 4 years in Germany, actually my husband and I moved back to Seattle again, and I was there. And as I was looking for my next role, I was like, what do I do? And where is my core interest in terms of your match between skill set and interest? And at the time, I was actually looking and thinking startup already. But then at the time, you would not believe it, my old boss from Deloitte and Touche from a very long time ago called me up, and when we had coffees maybe twice a year or so, it's like, wow, I just joined this really cool company. It's like totally not traditional. I mean, it is traditional, but not typical for a software person. It's called ABB, and I say, what? And GE is a total name in the US. So now it's a competitor of GE. It's awesome. This OT company, so basically industrial company, is trying to recruit technical people coming out of the software industry to really accelerate the digitalization initiatives they are undertaking. And I was so fascinated. I flew down to California. I met with Guido. We had a wonderful talk with him and the rest of the leadership team. And it's like, wow, this really is the next generation and an iteration of really the next level of where somebody like me coming out of the software industry could really impact and make a huge impact. And that's exactly what I did. As we were interviewing, they realized, oh, you're from Austria and you speak German, and in Switzerland they speak German too. Very hard to understand though, with the accent. But should you move to Switzerland, then you will be at the corporate headquarters and be kind of the extension of this digital group, which was located in California. And so I talked to my husband. It's like, are we up for this again? I mean, we were just there in Germany for 4 years. We had a good time there, but and so we decided, now we're gonna go for it. We're adventurous. We packed up our cats, we sold everything in the US and moved over. And what did I really do? I went back to my roots. I actually was instrumental and led the development of the digital partner ecosystem there. Because as you know, with digitalization, nobody can do it alone. You need to build a good ecosystem and to have these partnerships so really accelerate. So you have the components to then accelerate and build your digital solutions. And that's exactly what I did. So very much from eons ago, what I did at Deloitte and Touche, then what I did at Microsoft, I then basically applied to today's technologies, of course, and applied at ABB so to really accelerate these things, digitalization. So the partnerships I'm talking about, so somebody, you have an idea. I mean, obviously the underlying one was Microsoft, because the company had decided even before I came that to build the digital solutions on the Azure platform. And then basically I built an ecosystem around that. So everything from consulting firms to other technology companies, one of them being also Crate.io.
And thus brings us really to the present. I actually remember having a debrief with Christian Lutz, who was the founder and then CEO of Crate.io at the Zurich train station, and it must have been right after the meeting. He was telling me about the all the great work going on with ABB, and then speaking very highly of the participants of the meeting, yourself included. What was it about Crate.io that compelled you to have them partner with ABB and ultimately to join them?
So the partnering, I basically built up a governance and how one evaluates a partner. ABB, like industrial companies, are very process-driven. They're coming from the long history of engineering. And so basically it was a deep technical evaluation. It was not just a handshake, feel-good kind of thing. If you look at the basically Azure ecosystem to see what kind of key technologies are needed. And one of those key technologies was a super robust, highly scalable database for machine data, which is exactly what ABB was building, digital solutions using machine data. And so a deep assessment came about and with the technical teams. And after that, ABB, then basically the various stakeholders, we agreed, Crate should be one of the partners. And in this case, the application is the database. ABB is not one, and the strategy was really a best of breed strategy and is today also. So you don't just say, we're going to take this database and this database and this database and 5 more and everybody can pick. But no, it's because it's underlying technology, you want to select basically just one of each and then utilize these technologies to very rapidly skill your people on that and build these digital solutions that you see on the market today. So this is how this came about. And of course, met also Christian and the rest of the leadership team at the time. And when several months later, I got a special call, it's like, Eva, we want to talk to you about something very private, not related to ABB. Can we do this? And it's like, yeah, we can always have a private talk. and that is when Christian came to me and said, hey, we're looking for a successor for himself, a CEO to move the company to the next level and through the next rounds of venture funding. Would you be interested in doing this? And that's how this came about.
Wow, excellent, because it really brought together so many aspects of your career, your background, your aspirations, as you said, looking at startups earlier as well. So as I calculate, you've actually been there about 9 months now. I think you joined in September of 2020. What have been your largest lessons taking the helm at a hot startup?
Yes, I cannot believe it. Feels like eons already, but I'm sure I have more wrinkles in my face today already. No, just kidding. It's been awesome. It's been very much what I expected to move into a startup at the size. Today, Crate has about 60 team members. So quite a difference, obviously, from the large corporations I've been at. But the dynamic, the agility, the very fast speed that happens in a startup, and I've been dealing with many over the years, is exactly what is super attractive. I think not just for me, but also the team members. When I look at today, it's like attitude is number one. Do you want to be in this company? Do you want to make a contribution and go above and beyond? And I see this in every one of the team members today that we have. So this is really an exciting journey. Because it's a deep tech company, let's make no mistake here. It's technology driven. And that was very important for me to join. I said I want to be in leading and bleeding edge type groups, solutions, companies. And personally, the Crate technologies are really leading edge for the use cases that are there. Machine data, digitalization kind of use cases where one needs a super robust, extremely highly scalable database. And so, of course, what we need to do is to ensure that database is top-notch and stays top-notch and is leading edge. in terms of, I'm not talking bleeding edge, leading edge, meaning it works really well and hits the spot of the need of the customers and the target market. And that's what our development team is driving very aggressively. And this year, I'm super pleased because earlier this year, about 2 months ago, we had a big announcement of our core database for developers. And as you know, it's an open source product, and we open it up completely, and everybody can try this out on GitHub. And just yesterday, at the HMI conference, Hannover Messe, we announced the next generation, a completely new extension of an edge extension. So on top of the cloud, now we have an edge extension. It's commercially available. And this really hits the spot with all kinds of OT or industrial companies that are looking to really go into the digitalization and scale it out. So I'm very happy that the company is very technology driven. We're driving the roadmap very hard. We're delivering based on plan. And that's exactly what our customers and, of course, also the investors want to see.
Yes, I can vouch for that as an investor ourselves. But I've loved the way you and the team have positioned the company right at the intersection of the industrial IoT, because, of course, we're in DOC, Industry 4.0, and AI. And now I could add into that edge as well, which, we've had a very strong thesis on edge from the beginning of Momenta. All collectively what I'll just generally call digital industry. What are some of Crate.io's key use cases and wins?
Yeah, so totally. So Crate started out of consumer packaged good, and you know the very depth background of expertise I have in it as well. But and think one of the customers and DACH kind of audience, I'm sure they know them, is Alpla. Alpla is a plastic bottle manufacturer for, let's say, Coca-Cola and many other soaps and other things we can find in the grocery aisle and in various aisles in a grocery store. And as an example, what do we do there? It's in production, and you take numerous sensor data from machines that produce these bottles, and then at real time capture the data, analyze the data, and immediately then affect how the machines run to optimize the production. What does it mean, optimize production? In this case, the company is trying to use as little plastic as possible for sustainability reasons, as well as obviously cost, but also ensure that the quality is very high. And what we built there at Alpla is exactly that kind of use case. So the database captures the data, there's analytics for that, and on top of this, if something runs away in terms of machines get adjusted wrong or kind of move in the wrong direction, it immediately alerts the workers in the plant via a notification system, real time. Please go over to, let's say, line 3, machine 4, and ensure that give it a watch. And this has huge OEE benefits. The combination of lower product needed and raw materials, lower bad damaged products, and also the worker side. So a clear OEE case, and you don't now imagine this runs today in 16 plants. It's all real time. It's all real time analytics. It all uses the cloud. And let's say Alpla has 180 plants. What we realized, and this is some of the learnings, is like today everything is 100% cloud-based and it works perfectly fine. But there's limitations to this. When you think, some of the plants are in countries where the internet is slow, and we're having a very high, we're having real-time, production environment here. They can't wait 5 seconds till the internet comes back again or kind of catches up with itself. So having an edge compute is extremely critical here. Also, when you think about, I just mentioned one use case. We actually have 2 use cases, another one. But you're in a smart factory, there's dozens of use cases where you want a lot of data. And if you send all this to the cloud, it becomes prohibitively expensive because you know how cloud pricing works on any of the hyperscalers. It's based on consumption, so the more you send, the more it costs. So what you really want to do is have a cloud and edge strategy on this. This is the next generation. So I know I diverged maybe a bit, but I hope that gives a bit of an idea of what a typical or maybe one of the use cases could be.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll go off a little bit on that, just because I think you're on a really good track. So for those who aren't familiar with Crate.io particularly, why couldn't I use something from one of the hyperscalers or a standard database providers in this? What is the strong advantage that a Crate.io has in that?
Well, I wouldn't say you couldn't. You can. It depends what your use case is. So the benefit, why you can't use a standard one, kind of a traditional database, is very clean. The Crate database, actually you can combine the structured data, which you normally coming out of ERP systems, with unstructured data. And unstructured is the sensor data. It could be images from, like pictures from cameras taking car door pictures to make sure there is no dents in it or scratches or the paint was applied correctly. So in Crate, you can combine this all in one database. And you don't need multiple databases and trying to consolidate this and all that. And also it's meant specifically for, so the types of combination of data, very huge amounts of data, so billions of rows of data, and also to be able to analyze then in this database at real time. So when you're talking about industrial scale, where you really have these digitalization use cases, then Crate is exactly that database that you want. The hyperscalers have databases too, and I'm not saying I'm poo-pooing them at all. Actually, this is maybe a good starting point. What we're finding, customers come to us when it becomes highly scalable. That's when a Crate really shines, I would say.
I could certainly see that, and of course, your I'll call it high-speed packaging (CPG) background is by definition generates a lot of data and requires a very high response time. So I can see why you guys, that DNA has positioned you well. I guess kind of going back to your, as you say, leading edge experience in digital industry, I'm curious personally, what do you see as some of the key trends and opportunities in digital industry over the next decade?
Well, we've been seeing, and I've been seeing, obviously, especially in my days in ABB, a lot of industrial companies have been in the pilot stage of digitalization initiatives and building digital solutions and utilizing the new technologies. But really, it's here to stay now. Why am I saying this? When you look at the most recent IDC research from just this year, they calculate that this year AI machine learning revenues will be over 300 billion, and in 2024, 500 billion. That's significant. So we're not talking little pilots anymore. We're talking now maturing technologies that are coming out, so you can really build these digitalization initiatives at scale. And when you look at technologies, I see technologies emerging and evolving. To your point, why would someone not just use a typical, I won't name it, traditional software? Because it's not made for that. And what we're seeing is that there is new applications at every piece of the stack, part of the stack coming out that really meant for digitalization. So think the hyperscalers, so it's Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and so on. Connectivity options, 5G opens up a lot of new opportunities of digitalization projects one can do. Database layer like ours, we're specifically made for machine data. That's exactly what it's made for, not for something else. AI tools are springing up left and right, machine learning tools. So you don't have to be the super scientist, but you can have applications that guide you through and you actually can ramp up very quickly on this. And we're seeing AI software platforms coming out that offer the whole stack of that. And of course, when you think, great, what am I doing with those? I'm ensuring that we're embedding ourselves so that our piece is in there as part of the highly scalable database. So I really see that the technologies are coming out, they're here, they're maturing, We haven't quite seen a consolidation yet when you think about the many IoT platforms we have out there today. This will probably be the next step, but it's enough mature that every company can get started and more than get started, move things into production. That's what we're seeing right now. So the idea of moving from a try it out, you move into a pilot, you move this pilot into production, and then you scale it out. So I'm thinking one location to multiple location, one application to multiple applications. That's totally the way to do it, because you want to make sure it's stable and it's all true and trusted. But now you can accelerate this much, much more. And you see it across every industry out there. When I look at, I just gave you one example of discrete manufacturing, process manufacturing, oil and gas, very deep digitalization going on, new energies, renewables, smart buildings, smart cities. Think of concepts like smart farming and smart fishing. The word smart, I know it's widely used, but means there is typically some kind of digital solution applying cloud-based and edge-based technologies to have new services and offerings. Transportation, logistics, shipping, planes, retail, pharma, medtech. I mean, you see it really in every vertical. And I think that's why these numbers are so high, and it's clearly here to stay. And this is now the time to, really broadly implement and moving out of the pilot stages.
Along the same lines in terms of digital industry adoption and I'll call it the pilot purgatory, as many people like to call it, I'm always fascinated in people's opinions around success and where companies are really positioned for that. So how do you know when a company is ready for Crate.io, as an example, and what best practices have you seen in driving adoption success there?
So I see, like I just said, the digitalization initiatives go pretty much across every industrial industry that I can see or segment I can see. And it's widespread already. 2 years ago, I saw research from Capgemini. At the time, was 69% of German companies were working on piloting at least one machine learning AI type digital solution, an application. That was 2 years ago. Now it's much higher already. So we're not talking, this is a unique thing and I have to hunt this down in companies. There is the typical groups when you find, you just ask, is there a chief digital officer or who heads up digitalization initiatives, or who is the head of like data analytics? If you ask these questions and you point to a person, then you found your person and they're actually truly working on these initiatives. So it's very easy to find, and every company that I've encountered there, from very large to, I would say, mid-size, is working on this right now in terms of the various B2B segments.
Okay. So finally, we always like to end this kind of where we started with, really the focus on your leadership journey. Maybe a more personal question. Where do you find your inspiration and I'll say insatiable energy?
Well, that is good. Well, it's two things. One, on the private side, I love being outdoors, and that's why I live in Switzerland. So it's just wonderful, during the day I'm connected 7/24 on various tools, and I just love doing that. But you gotta just turn it off sometime, and on the weekends you find myself out in the mountains enjoying the wonderful nature we have here. So that really gives me some time to pause and to think stuff through and to really reflect what's going on and kind of come up with new ideas. From a work level, I really find the energy when I see that the team members, and it would say extended team members, when I look at partners that we collaborate with, or even customers, when they get excited, when they're motivated, when they're really gung-ho about what the direction is going and seeing the many opportunities, their enthusiasm brings me enthusiasm, and it kind of funnels it going forward. So very technology driven, really, and leading edge driven. When when a solution or a larger solution with partners brings definite value, either in either OEE or time to market or revenue increases, or in these days lots of sustainability or safety, worker safety, or areas like that, it just drives my energy up when we really provide something that has a benefit. The last component I have to say is people driven. Networking is very important for me, also fostering other people's careers. And so I stay in contact with many of my team members, with many of my bosses over the years. And I referred to a few. I mean, you even find new jobs through them, but that's not the purpose. The purpose is to see how careers developed, how can we help each other over the years, can I support them in any way or fashion in their career, personally, through some networking. And it just makes me truly happy. It gives me energy to see this, that team members that were on my team years ago now are wildly successful in some other areas, moving up to the ranks or just happy in their jobs. I mean, that's what really drives me.
We share an awful lot in common beyond our Atlanta background as well, and certainly the least of which is not the love for Switzerland. And so I live in Engelberg, and so I absolutely love the outdoors as well. So Eva, thank you so much for spending this time with us today.
I really appreciate it, and please, if I have to plug this in, if anybody wants to know more about the database, please just call me or send me an email.
Absolutely. It's crate.io. So this has been Eva Schönleitner, CEO of Crate.io, and if I can add, a perpetual explorer of the bleeding/leading edge. So thank you for listening, and please join us next week for the next episode of our Digital Industry Leadership Series. Thank you and have a great day. You've been listening to the Momenta Digital Industry Leadership Podcast, produced by, for, and about digital industry leaders. We hope you've enjoyed the discussion, and as always, we welcome your comments and suggestions. Please check our website at momenta.one for archived versions of podcasts and webinars, as well as resources to help with your digital industry journey. Thank you for listening.